headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South, and I am Sonia Gray. Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno is in London to address the Global Disability Forum on Tuesday. Moreno is expected to talk about the various inclusive social programs that he has introduced in Ecuador, which have improved the lives of people with disabilities. The Ecuadorian president is the first world leader elected while in a wheelchair. Around 1 billion people in the world have a disability, 800 million from developing countries. And this is the first leg of Moreno's trip to Europe, which will also take him to Spain. But speculation is rife that Moreno's visit could also finalize an agreement with the British government to hand over the WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange. Supporters of Assange have been gathering outside the Ecuadorian Embassy in London to defend his right to asylum. The Ecuadorian Embassy gave refuge to Assange back in 2012 after former President Rafael Correa granted him political asylum. Now, the change of direction by Moreno puts his asylum at risk. The Swedish courts dropped the charges against him, but Assange still fears the United States will seek his extradition for disclosing classified information.
I was just reading the Huffington Post, my Danish dialect, where mostly people, they don't see him, not most people, but the comments, people who likes the comments, they said that we don't understand why he's a hero, we don't think that he should be supported. It's too long time now, just get rid of him. And it's terrible because what's happened to him in there could happen to you and me. And he just wants to expose the truth.
On Sunday, the Ecuadorian government responded to the rumors, saying there is no plan to discuss Assange's case during President Lenin Moreno's trip to the United Kingdom. The statement also said that due to the complexity of Assange's asylum and the involvement of different stakeholders, there is no short or long-term solution to his situation in sight. However, despite Ecuador's assurances, concern was once again raised when a white van was seen removing furniture and belongings from the Ecuadorian Embassy in London. The WikiLeaks founder has spent 6 years confined to a back room in the embassy. A number of human rights organizations, including UN bodies, have called his confinement inhumane. And in Ecuador, former President Rafael Correa's defense team is appealing the preventative measure against him at the National Court of Justice. Correa is accused of alleged links to the kidnapping of the former Assembly member Fernando Balda in 2012. Our correspondent Denise Herrera has more details.
Hello, yes indeed, we are at the National Court of Justice, where the appeal hearing requested by the defense team of former President Rafael Correa has started. The defense team of Correa argued that the decision taken by the judge Daniela Camacho, who ordered the preventive detention of former President Rafael Correa, was unconstitutional. The defense team argued that the former president are living actually in Belgium, so he has to present before the consulate in Belgium. By the order of the preventive detention taken by the court, decided that the ex-president Rafael Correa has to present before the National Court in Ecuador. So we have to wait the decision. We will take the court. Former President Rafael Correa was linked to the alleged kidnapping of the ex-politician Fernando Balda. That is all for now. We will keep you posted with more information as soon as we can. Back to you at the studio.
Argentina has seen more demonstrations against the government's deal with the IMF as economic and finance ministers gathered for a meeting of the G20 in Buenos Aires. In a statement released at the end of the meeting, the G20 member states said dialogue is the only way to face financial vulnerabilities. The statement has been seen as a minimum agreement to save a meeting at which ministers failed to reach any agreement on trade. The document is meant to be the basis for the heads of state to work on at the upcoming G20 summit in Buenos Aires on November 30th.
It is not a matter of denying the differences that may exist in certain topics where there is always a very strong and sincere dialogue. But then, when it comes to reaching an agreement and having a statement, we will try to emphasize consensus.
During the meeting, the United States maintained its position on new tariffs, which have prompted trade tensions. Mainstream economists say the new policy promoted by the U.S. President Donald Trump and his administration threatens to hit the growth of the global economy.
People are trying to make this about the United States and protectionism. That's not the case at all. This is about the United States wanting free and fair trade.
But representatives from the European Union accused the U.S. administration of starting a trade war. French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire said Europe will refuse to negotiate with a gun to its head, while the EU Finance Commissioner Pierre Moscovici urged the U.S. to act as an ally. Now, concerns have been raised in Colombia as the new Congress, dominated by the right wing, and Iván Duque's upcoming government have declared their intention to modify the peace agreement with the FARC. One of their targets is rural reform. The rural reform aims to sharply reduce poverty in the countryside. Former FARC members and social movements fear this and other planned changes will hinder the reintegration of former combatants, as well as the current peace talks with the National Liberation Army, or ELN. Meanwhile, violence continues across the country. Over 400 social leaders have been killed since the peace accord was signed in December 2016. And to talk more about these modifications and how they could jeopardize the peace process, we're being joined by the Colombian human rights lawyer, Laura Barran Mendoza, who's working on the implementation of the agreement and conflict resolution. Laura, thank you so much for joining us. President-elect Iván Duque has announced various modifications to the peace agreement, which his party is already promoting in Congress. To what extent could those changes put the peace agreement at risk?
Thank you for your question. It's a pleasure to be with you. Answer to your question, I would like to highlight the changes that have been already adopted by the Congress after being promoted by Centro Democrático. These two modifications are related to the procedural law of the Special Jurisdiction for Peace, namely the extradition of the ex-FARC members who have committed crimes after the signature of peace agreement, and the suspension of processes against military members until a special chamber is created in the Special Jurisdiction for Peace. However, Juan Manuel Santos mentioned that these changes come with a constitutional doubt. Now we have to remember that we have different ways which have been given some sort of protection to what has been established by the peace agreement. One of them is the legal shielding granted by the Constitutional Court in 2017. This judgment established that the Legislative Act 02 of 2017, which provides the stability and legal security to the final agreement, is in accordance with the Colombian Constitution, so that represents that this act adheres an article in the political constitution granting the final agreement a mandatory character as a parameter of interpretation, reference of development, and validity of all regulations that intend to be developed. In other words, each governmental institution has to be or comply with the content and purpose of such agreement.
Now, Laura, really quickly, despite the peace accord, violence continues, especially in the countryside, with a wave of killings of social leaders. Should the state take responsibility for this massive loss of life? And what do you think can be done to actually stop the murders?
Well, it is true that we have more than 311 victims since 2016. However, this is not a recent phenomenon. In regard with the current killings, we have to link it with the notion of power vacuum and cycle of violence, also known as a power void, which is an analogy between the physical vacuum to the condition when someone has lost control of something and no one has replaced them. So this is what is going on in Colombia. And this is proved by because it is happening in areas completely isolated, such as Antioquia, Arauca, Cauca, Chocó, Córdoba. So now what we have to bear in mind is that from a legal perspective, Colombia is obliged to comply with multiple international instruments that establish the obligation to respect, to protect, and to fulfill human rights, plus the obligations to prevent, investigate, punish, and provide effective remedy. We are here talking about the compliance of these obligations by safeguarding the lives and personal safety of defenders, especially those protecting land, territory, the environment, and those who have assumed social leadership roles in communities on which the armed groups is ongoing. Well, the armed conflict is ongoing.
Now, Laura, how do you think the former FARC members will react to this new reality, both in the Congress and in the regions?
Well, to be honest, we have to be based on real facts. So out of 4,000 ex-FARC members, we have already 12,535 who have been reported before the High Commissioner of Peace. So this shows that there's a will to recooperate and to have a new start. This also shows that the peace-building process is on its way and that it can keep working if we continue with security guarantees, legal guarantees, socioeconomic reintegration, and political reintegration. This last one is linked with the political participation of the political party of FARC in the current Congress. They have stated also that they will keep fighting, but within the legal framework. So this submission to the law is what can reestablish the rule of law and create a Colombian nation. Peace cannot be achieved from one day to another. Peace is a continuing process that demands hard work from every single actor in society. I'm talking about here former FARC, government, companies, every single Colombian such as me.
Thank you so much, Laura Barron Mendoza. I think that's an excellent point at which we can end this interview. Thank you so much for chatting with us. And we are going to take a short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
Maternal love is the love that's going to change the future of mankind. So we'd like you to...
we like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind, because it's more inclusive.
There we go, exactly. Yes, thank you.
We can all learn from each other.
Welcome back. After days of study and intense debate, members of the National Assembly of People's Power in Cuba approved with some modifications the new draft constitution of the Republic. It will now go on for public consultation and then a referendum.
After completing their analysis of the constitutional reform, Cuban parliamentarians also agreed to submit the draft to popular consultation from August 13th to November 15th.
This assembly has been extraordinary. First, for the debate. Almost 200 speakers, just at the session to discuss the proposed draft constitution, but also in the sense of the broad democratic discussion.
The most important thing is what's about to take place, despite all the time that's been spent by our very knowledgeable colleagues in the Commission. Following this rich debate, it now goes out to the people, and we are sure that there are millions of proposals, millions of opinions, and we will get the opportunity to hear these and then come back to the National Assembly to approve the final draft bill, with the opinion of all of Cuba included.
The president of the Councils of State and Ministers, Miguel Diaz-Canel, welcomed the debate as passionate, committed, critical, patriotic, and full of contributions. He said the entire process will help to strengthen the unity of Cubans in support of the revolution.
This exercise of direct participation of the people carries the greatest political relevance and will be a further recognition that the revolution is based on the most genuine democracy. Each Cuban will be able to express their opinions freely and to contribute to a constitutional text that reflects today and the future of the homeland.
The draft of the new constitution incorporates many novelties, including the recognition of the role of the market and of new reforms of property, like private property. It introduces a new political structure with the figures of the president and vice president alongside a proposal for a prime minister. And the institution of marriage will be recognized as being between two people without specifying their sex.
We are inaugurating a new era. This is a dialectic and modern constitution. If we must break with tradition, we'll do so. Because to break with tradition is also a revolutionary act, and in socialism, there's no room for any type of discrimination against human beings. As such, I'm in favor of Article 68, and I say it's something that has nothing to do with the legal aspects. Love doesn't have a sex.
Many agree that this is a process of daring, innovative, and revolutionary reform, ratifying the socialist character of the revolution and the guiding role of the Communist Party of Cuba, as well as the irrevocability of the Cuban political and economic model, and preserving the principles of social justice and humanism.
People are always going to speculate and talk. We've always given very courageous steps. We've always said that the Cuban model must be our own. It must be authentic, without copying from other places, but assimilating experiences which we consider positive for us.
We've presented a draft constitution which is completely fitted to our reality, to who we are, and which we hope will be a route towards what we are trying to achieve in terms of social justice, fairness, and citizen participation.
In the words of the Secretary of the Council of State, Homero Acosta, it's a rare and unprecedented process in the history of the world where the people become the constituent force.
Peruvian President Martin Vizcarra has sworn in Vicente Zeballos as the new Justice Minister. The appointment came just after a series of audio recordings sparked a growing scandal over the sale of sentences and the abuse of power. The corruption scandal prompted the resignation of the Justice Minister, Salvador Herresi, and the President of the Supreme Court, Dibeli Rodriguez. Zeballos will have to deal with a ministry under suspicion after the uncovering of a corruption network involving judges and prosecutors, a scandal that has increased the people's distrust in their institutions. And in Brazil, the far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro has presented his candidacy for October's presidential election. Despite his insults towards women, the gay community, and his praise for the abusers of the military dictatorship, the candidate for the Social Liberal Party is running in second place in the polls, behind the former president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, with 20% of voter support. Bolsonaro was also linked to those responsible for attacks against activists supporting Lula. He also said that if he wins the presidency, he will take Brazil out of the Paris Climate Agreement.
I know the discomfort that I have caused, along with only a few political allies and friends, to what I call the establishment, or the machine, or the system. We know that. I'm the ugly duckling in this story,
but I'm certain soon we will be beautiful.
Sabemos isso. Eu sou patinho feio nessa história.
Still in Brazil, Chinese investors are seeking an even closer relationship with Latin America's largest economy. Between 2003 and 2017, China was involved in 250 different projects in Brazil with a value at almost $124 billion. China is Brazil's largest trading partner with nearly $20.9 billion investments in planned and confirmed projects for 2018, and that's the highest number in the last 7 years. Mexican President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador has released the 7-page letter he sent to the U.S. President Donald Trump, detailing how he plans to improve the economy and security. López Obrador suggested that a plan be drafted between the two countries and also Central American governments to take the strides necessary to improve conditions so that people no longer need to migrate to the north. He said that developing the region and combating poverty would be key parts of the effort to curb migration. A 2,500-year-old archaeological monument was discovered in Guatemala. The two fragments of carved stones known as the Descent of the Grandfather were found at the Tacalic Abaj archaeological site and date back to the middle pre-classical period of the Olmec era. From 800 BC, the Olmec are known as the earliest major civilization in Central America, recognized as the Mesoamerican mother culture. And the mountains of the Chilean desert of Atacama are covered in snow. It's really mesmerizing with amazing views. Snowfalls in the area have been constant since mid-June, despite this period being unusually characterized by high temperatures. A cold front combined with moisture coming from Argentina has caused the phenomenon, according to the Weather Service. Located at 2,500 meters above sea level, the Atacama is one of the driest deserts in the world. Amazing visuals. We're going to take a short break, so join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. The Iranian Defense Minister Amir Khatami opened the mass production line of a medium-range air-to-air missile line on Monday as hostility increases between Iran and the United States. During the opening of the mass production line, Khatami addressed the situation with the United States and spoke of Iran's readiness to respond to any aggression. U.S. President Donald Trump told his Iranian counterpart, Hassan Rouhani, that any threats to the U.S. risk consequences which few throughout history have suffered before. Trump tweeted the message just hours after Rouhani said the United States should come to realize that peace with Iran is the mother of all peace, and waging war with the country is the mother of all wars. The 5th China-Africa People's Summit has opened in Chengdu, the capital of China's Sichuan province. The forum's 3 principles include promoting cooperation, enhancing friendship between citizens of China and Africa, and furthering world peace. Chinese President Xi Jinping sent a congratulatory message on the opening of the forum and extended his welcome to the leaders of African countries. And Chinese President Xi Jinping is in Rwanda, meeting with the Rwandan President Paul Kagame. China has become Rwanda's largest trade partner, with 70% of roads in Rwanda built by Chinese companies. The two countries hope to develop cooperation in the areas of culture, science, education, and human resource development. This stop is part of a trip that will continue on to South Africa and Mauritius. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesyourtv.net/English. You should also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Sunny Gray. Thank you so much for watching.